Hey there, I'm Mr. Terry, and I'm a high school history teacher. Welcome back to another History Teacher X video. Our new video from another popular channel I haven't heard of has come across the timeline. I wanted to check it out. It's called North Korea's New Tank is a Nightmare. And the channel's called Task and Purpose. All right, I didn't know the North Koreans were working on new tank technology, so see what they got? All right, original video link is down below. Make sure you support it. Give them view, like, subscription. Then come back here. Make sure you give a like to this video and let's get started. All right, I don't know anything about this channel. If it's something I should keep watching, make sure to give me video suggestions. But let's see what they got. All right, there's Kim. Is he driving the tank?
North Korea has just shocked me by releasing unexpected and very entertaining images of Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un driving around in their brand new next generation tank.
Reminds me of that movie, The Interview. Don't they drive around in a tank with the dictator of
2020
from that
This latest
show?
showing has given us some new insight into whether or not it's a legit main battle tank to be feared, or if it's an elaborate mix of tractor parts and cardboard held together with duct tape. And if you answer that wrong, 10 years dungeon for you. The M2020 was first unveiled in October 2020 during a military parade celebrating the 75th anniversary of North Korea's Communist Workers' Party. A total of 9 of these things drove down the main avenue during the parade, sporting what looked like modern optics, fire control systems, armor plating, and even active protection systems.
Remember, that's what these shows are, right? These anniversaries and all this stuff is supposed to show the people and like dictators. People have done this before. Soviet Union used to do it all the time and parade through the like the Red Square with all kinds of missiles and stuff like that. You know, it's supposed to assure the people that they are protected and, you know, show regimes in a positive light.
I have about a million questions about this tank, starting with, why does it have an anti-tank guided missile on it? Are those a good idea or not? Will it be mass-produced and widely adopted? And what is North Korea's experience with tank warfare in the first place? During the Korean War from 1950 to 1953, North Korea did not have its own domestically produced main battle tanks. They relied on about 200 of the Soviet-supplied T-34 tanks from Joseph Stalin, which they used to great effect in the early stages of the Korean War. But once the U.S. entered the chat, those North Korean tanks got busted by American air superiority and more advanced U.S. tanks. That's oversimplifying, of course. But the reason I bring up the gist of that story is to illustrate the fact that North Korea does not have a ton of experience in operating modern tanks on the tactical level in combat. One of the first things you might notice about the M2020 is just how visually distinct it is compared to what North Korea has shown off in the past.
I think it looks way better if we're just going off of that. Those other ones are ugly as crap.
Historically, the country has always used the derivative of the Russian T-62 tank designs. But trade embargoes against them, especially in the realm of military equipment, have largely prevented North Korea from obtaining modern tank technology.
That's why the M2020 is supposed to be a symbol of their defense industry's ability to produce, despite the fact that they're under international sanctions. The tanks we do see,
that's where it's going to be interesting, because pretty much so much of the world has put embargoes on any kind of trade with North Korea, right? They have to do so much on their very short list of allies, right? Maybe the Chinese, but they're gonna have to innovate this on their own. Not gonna get a lot of
Frankenstein designs incorporating a base model T-62 with various overlapping additions from other tanks like your T-72s and your Type 88s. They have managed to get pieces of them. Moving down, we can see that 7 road wheels mean it's not just a T-62 in makeup, and actually a brand new design that we haven't seen before. Currently, North Korea fields 3 tank designs. You got your Chanma-ho, your Pak-pung-ho, and your Sanggun 915. And so between all these old tanks and new, they're estimated to have between 3,500 and 4,000 tanks today. Typically, with each newer iteration of North Korean tank, a few incremental upgrades here and there are thrown onto it, but the M2020 quickly broke this trend and went absolutely balls to the wall with upgrades, attempting to take a leap forward here.
Hey, remember, the North Korean military is one of the largest in the world. Isn't it the third, I want to say, between the U.S. and China? Basically, all men are standing military. They have a couple million, I think. It's insane.
Turret of the M2020
How much they put
sports
into
what appears
the
to be an impressive diversity of sights. The right side has a commander's independent thermal viewer, and the gunner's sight is just seen below that, and a remote weapon system with its own thermal sights as well. And this is where one of the tank's strangest aspects jumps right out at you and makes you kind of scratch your head and go, oh, what? You'll notice it's got a dual-tube Bullseye 5 ATGM launcher located on the right side of the turret. Adding anti-tank guided missiles to a main battle tank isn't a new idea, but it's a very questionable one. Fossil Warren, an American M1 tank commander in the Gulf War and author of a few great books, had a great answer for why tanks usually do not have this kind of anti-tank guided missile, saying, quote, let's consider cost. One M829 series round costs less than $10,000, while one TOW missile runs about $180,000. We should also consider other parts of logistics. The TOW missile weighs a bit over 60 pounds, while the Sabo round weighs under 46 pounds. Finally, adding a TOW missile launcher to the tank really doesn't give the tank any better chance to defeat enemy tanks than it already has mounted. But it could significantly complicate the logistical footprint of the tank as well as operating it, end quote.
So
according to that tank expert, anti-tank guided missiles wouldn't be worth the added weight, added cost, or added trouble. I think the decision to include external ATGMs on a tank is probably one of the weirdest design choices for the M2020.
Now, so my questions would be, are any of it, is everything operational on these? Is it just to look good? You know what I mean? Are they just...
The launcher we typically see on vehicles like the Bradley and BMPs are primarily there as a defensive weapon against tanks, because their 25 or 30 millimeter cannon lacks the power to punch through tank holes. To put it another way, actual main battle tanks don't need external ATGM launchers, because their main cannons can deliver kill shots faster, more accurately, and more reliably. So why then? Why would North Korea put one on there? I, of course, don't know the answer for sure. I don't have a direct line to Kim.
You don't?
I would personally think...
Somebody get Dennis Rodman on the line. Dennis Rodman will find out.
It's what I would call a bit of military theater. I know military pageantry when I see it. They added those ATGMs because they look freaking cool, or more accurately, they look spooky and scary. These tanks and these parades are meant to posture and scare their opponents. Anything they can toss on there that looks like it has teeth is good for them. Additionally, there doesn't appear to be any kind of extra storage space for the additional missile ammo. Reloading would also be near impossible, as the placement of the launcher of the missile on the outside would require multiple crew members to dismount and reload. Other vehicles get around this by having rear hatches that allow the crew to stay inside the vehicle to reload, but the M2020 visually lacks anything of this design. It's the same reason North Korea does things like this to show how tough they are. There are cultural differences here that I could not even begin to wrap my head around.
Well, okay, hold on. I got to go back to this, because there's got to be some purpose of these drills, right? It's the same reason North Korea... Okay, he's just like holding the brick that's getting smashed. It's not like on his stomach or anything, showing his ab skill. And it's just going to pour brick dust in his eyeballs. And then this is just neck tug of war.
This to show how tough they are.
But it wasn't even like pulling him though.
Fine.
Look at this.
It's the same reason North Korea does things like this.
They're not even
to
like
show
pulling
how tough
each
they
other.
are. There are cultural differences here that I could
not
even...
Is that like laying in glass?
Begin to wrap my head around.
Those guys were jacked.
Which explain why adding on extra, likely unnecessary weapons.
So they probably, like, those aren't even functional. They just tacked them on like Legos.
Makes sense from their perspective. But to dive into the actual capabilities of these missile systems, the ATGMs that are on the tank, they are the latest North Korean Kornet missile clone. And according to North Korean reports, they can penetrate 1,100 millimeters of steel armor from a range of 4 kilometers away, as well as a top attack function. The launcher itself is nearly identical to the American Bradley TOW launcher in appearance. Similar to the M2 Bradley, the launcher is stowed in a vertical position and then raised to a parallel horizontal position to fire. So it could be possible maybe they have the ATGMs because they're worried that their tank main cannon cannot penetrate the hull of the adversarial tanks. Just look at the fact that it's got 3 separate secondary weapon systems. Your AGS-30 automatic grenade launcher, as opposed to the more traditional 12.7mm machine gun. Got a 7.62 coaxially mounted machine gun on there. I believe some of these weapons serve the same purpose as an animal's brightly colored feathers that are designed to scare off predators. The M2020 contains a manned turret, but there has been some level of debate between experts as to whether it has a use of an autoloader or not. The specific layout of the turret in North Korea's tank design history implies that it would be a crew of 4, with one of them being a loader.
There's a guy
However,
there,
we have only seen 3 crew members in any press releases. It could be that North Korea tank loaders are either too shy or not photogenic enough to be in front of the cameras. We'll have to wait and find out.
I feel like they would show it in its best form, and those kind of things, they want to show it in its best form.
It's armed with 125 millimeter.
The North Koreans are so much about image, both internally but also, you know, externally, right? Their whole ideology is based off of wanting to basically take on the world. And what I mean by that is not like offensively. I'm just saying, like, let's go into some history here, right? The Korean Peninsula has experienced imperialism off and on for the better part of many centuries, right? And then more recently, you had like the Japanese invasion, right? They come in like late 1800s, into the 1900s, they fully annex it. So they had that, and then, you know, liberated there, and then you get the war, you know, happening there, and you know, World War II. Then you get Korean War, and then their bloody Civil War, and basically the idea was screw the rest of the world. We're gonna do our own thing. Don't mess with us. And these are the types of things that are supposed to show that, right? It's called Juche philosophy. Look it up sometime.
Cannon derived from the Russian 2A-46. This gives it an effective range of about 3,000 meters, firing heat or sabot rounds, and 4,000 meters for high explosive shells. It also appears to come with a muzzle reference system, or MRS, that uses laser detection to calculate barrel droop after sustained fire for better accuracy. Russian-designed tanks like the T-72, and specifically the original 2A-46 cannon, developed by the Soviets, have the ability to fire cannon-launched missiles such as your 9M112 and your 9M119.
These are so funny. Did you guys see that movie? Was it T-34? We watched it on we did a community watch party back when Twitch was doing Amazon watch parties. It was so like funny. It's a Russian, you know, like Soviet perspective tank movie. And it's just like, I don't know, they're like Tokyo drifting and stuff in the tanks, and you get these kind of shots. It's so funny though.
But the use of these anywhere has been near to non-existent. According to almost all reports,
it's funny kind of thing.
North Korea lacks both the ability to produce and maintain multiple types of ATGM rounds.
Right.
And having more than one type of missile on a single tank would not make a ton of practical or tactical sense. Royal Kogin-su is the North Korean defense industry plant that I just mispronounced. It's responsible for building this, I believe. It's one of the main points for manufacturing tank locations in the mountainous Xinhung, South.
Well, the issue with understanding what they work on and everything is, North Korea is an intelligence black hole. We don't really know what goes on there. Like, it's completely shut off. And you have these other efforts and stuff to try to infiltrate it or get that. But so much of what we do know has to be based off of just like anything they do put out publicly. Anything they do put out publicly is censored. It's propaganda. So it's so hard to actually know what is going on.
On the surface, the new tank looks like a rough combination of the American M1 Abrams and the Russian T-14 Armada. And you got your Chinese VT-4 influences in some areas. So this has led to some speculation that China or Russia provided some level of assistance in designing the tank, which would fall in line with trends of greater cooperation between North Korea and the other two.
That's basically the squad. That's pretty much all North Korea has as support is right there. By the way, been like that ever since Korean War.
Countries. The electronics needed for a modern tank outclass those that can realistically be produced by North Korea. It could be that they're repurposing non-military technology from their trade with China and other countries into tank parts, or they're receiving manufacturing support from few friendly countries that they have. The speed at which the tank was developed and shown to actually move around and shoot is either an indication that North Korea's manufacturing capabilities have increased, or more likely that other countries, specifically Russia and China and Iran, are lessening their trade restrictions. However, just throwing money into development won't magically make certain technologies appear out of thin air, and it requires some form of outside assistance. While no technology on the M2020 is itself groundbreaking by any means, it's the fact that it was even able to be manufactured or produced by North Korea that is a sign of major significance of note for us. Main battle tanks, especially ones with modern optics and fire control systems, are incredibly complex and expensive to develop. Let's go out on a limb here and just assume all of this tank technology is real and actually works as advertised.
We get it. Most likely there was, foreign aid. Okay.
For argument's sake, let's give Kim Jong-un the benefit of the doubt. How could that possibly be the case when North Korea's GDP is as low as 48 billion with a population of 25 million? North Korea's GDP is about 100 times less than South Korea, and their GDP per capita hovers around the same levels as Afghanistan and Haiti. You can accomplish some defense goals when 26 to 33% of your GDP is spent on defense, putting yearly budgets at roughly $4 billion. It helps when you invest all of your resources into one area, like defense, instead of your population. Some experts believe that currently, right now, in North Korea, food insecurity is at its worst level that it's been at since the 1990s.
Is that right? Because so the 90s was huge. I mean, they lost millions in their famine there. I did not know that right now they're doing that. So again, sometimes when that happens, there's gonna be a few reasons, but some can be diverting funds to buy stuff like that. You have something like think of like the Great Leap Forward, okay, and the famine that came from that in China. How China had to like export grain and stuff to get money to build their industrialization. I wonder if North Korea is doing something similar there. That we saw though how historically how bad that is when food insecurity is already tight, and if you pressure that for other funding initiatives, you're going to have a famine, and that's awful. So here's something too. Well, the numbers will never be very clear. They'll also not accept foreign aid in these situations too. So you're not going to see groups go in like you see into like Ukraine or Gaza or something like that. You're not going to see that kind of aid group.
Reports estimated about 500,000 people died in North Korea during the 1990s famine on the low end. Other estimates place that number in the millions.
I've heard that way higher than that.
Hypothetically, this is one way that North Korea could produce a next-generation tank and missiles and weapons. They could do it at the expense of their people.
The comparison to Western tanks was highlighted with its choice of desert camo, which by all accounts is useless in the Korean peninsula, but similar to a majority of modern tanks that it would be based on.
Dude, look at
the latest images of the M2020 post-2023 and 2024 now show them sporting a darker, greener look, which is more suited for North Korea's geography. Additionally, with the new paint came the addition of explosive reactive armor bricks on the turret and what appears to be a T-14-like ERA plating on the side, which was absent from that initial introduction of the tank in 2020. The turret is a strong breakaway from the rounded cast designs found on previous North Korean tanks, being some kind of cross between an Abrams and Armata. One surprising piece of technology found on the 9 existing M2020s that blew everybody's mind out of the back of their booty is an active protection system. These are a rare sight on tanks because of how cost prohibitive they can be. Visually, these APS launchers most closely resemble the Russian Afghanet system, while the side ASIA radar detectors for the launchers fit more within those found on the Abrams. Now, Afghanet systems are able to intercept large caliber Sabo tank rounds traveling at like Mach 5 according to reports. Seeing as APS setup are expensive and can be difficult to get right, a lot of speculation was brought up as to whether or not it was legit or some kind of paper mache mock-up. However, videos in the summer of 2023 were released showing the M2020's APS hard killing an incoming RPG round. Of course, this is still possibly North Korean Hollywood magic that can make anything happen. Similar to the Armata, though, are the location of active protection countermeasures.
Defense systems like blow my mind. Okay, I mean, you have something like enormous ones, say like the Iron Dome in Israel, which is just incredible piece of military marvel to see how that thing could pick out stuff. But then like even on tanks and stuff, you have something shoot, and then you have something that can intercept it. Like, that's so crazy to me.
Integrated within the turret. Strangely enough, however, it's that those launchers sit inside of cuts inside the turret itself rather than embedded within it. I think this is at best a strange engineering choice, given that any break in the armor like that greatly reduces the overall strength of the armor surrounding it and create a massive weak point. I would never dare to question the directions of the Supreme Leader, though. I'm sure he had his reasons. The mounting around the turret would offer higher levels of protection from parallel shots, but would leave the top of the turret exposed to any kind of like top-down Javelin or FPV kamikaze drones.
However, it is much easier to intercept an RPG round than a tank round because it travels much slower. And if we consider the fact that dedicated tank-on-tank fighting has been exceedingly rare in the 21st century,
it might not be the worst trade-off. Tyler Rajaway from the War Zone pointed out, quote, "The reality is, while the Soviet Union developed the first APS in the late 1970s, the technology behind the miniaturized radars and other sensors, as well as the interceptors found in more modern systems, is complex and may still be beyond the reach of North Korea at present. This is probably our biggest indicator that while there might be a functioning tank underneath that armor, the design is at least partially a facade to look impressive. The road wheels, side skirts, flaps, and rear cage armor all add more visual similarities with the Russian T-14. The slat armor is mainly there to stop your anti-tank guided missiles. The actual track of the tank more closely resembles those on the Western tanks, being double-pinned rubber tracks versus single-pin metal tracks.
To put it simply, double-pin tracks offer increased strength and reliability, while your single-pin tracks are a little simpler and lighter.
The armor is similar to what's found on the Iranian Zulfikar 3, and current estimates place the composite materials making it up to be on par with third-generation tanks like your T-80 and T-90. Professor Sung Woo, the head of the Department of Military Drones at Shinhan University and former policy advisor to the Joint Chiefs of Staff in South Korea, stated he believes the Iranians may have helped North Korea develop the tank for this reason.
I feel like any information that does come out, the best would probably be from South Korea. They probably got much better taps on a lot of that information, but even that would still be difficult.
If this tank's capabilities are true, it's a significant jump in protective abilities compared to their aging T-62 spin-offs, but it still needs to be taken with a healthy pinch of salt. In terms of engines on the M2020, we're still waiting for Kim to have the decency to open one of these up and show us the power pack, but a few physical traits on the tank give us a pretty good idea of what to expect. The tank has a large rear engine compartment, which holds what is expected to be an upgraded version of your 12-cylinder Pak Pung Ho engine. This will give the M2020 somewhere between 1,000 and 1,200 horsepower. Any information about top speed, range, even weight is probably completely unknown as of now,
especially if it has all that
except that it is
stuff,
powerful enough to haul around at least one chonky dictator who, after riding it, declared the most powerful tank in the world, and that North Korea should continue to prepare for war. Quote-unquote war preparations by the North is nothing new.
See, all this stuff, it reinforces the power structure there, right? That's what so much of this is about. Again, even if it's fake, you have to constantly, when you have a regime like this, right, especially an undemocratic one, you have to constantly be pretty much doing propaganda all the time to stay in power.
Development of the M2020 is only part of a larger 5-year modernization plan undergone by the DPRK. And most recent training exercises with the M2020, with the Supreme Leader in attendance, were largely done as a response to large joint training exercises between the United States and South Korea in early March 2024. Whether or not the M2020 would be an effective tank is difficult to say, because there's so little information available, and the fact that it's only 4 years old, it's only been shown on camera 4 times, tells us that in its current state, it's likely not in operational status yet. However, M2020s that are currently in service are some mixture of prototype and weapons testbed. As we look at the on-paper and presumed capabilities of the M2020, it's very easy to just write it off as a piece of track propaganda with no actual worth. It's important to remember that while
there is some precedent for that. They've done that with our rockets and stuff like that. We find out they end up like just blowing up, and I didn't like a missile base or something like blow up. And every once in a while they'll launch one over in the Sea Japan and stuff like that, but they'll show all these, but then in actuality, again with their rocket technology being one of those, is like so much worse than they put on.
Korea is without a doubt
not that you want to
overstating the capabilities, and that this tank's capabilities are still nowhere close to what Western militaries are fielding these days. This tank is not an impossible asset for them to create. Given the greater cooperation with North Korean and outside nations that have vested interest in keeping American influence in Korea at a minimum, and the raw manufacturing capabilities of the country, a relatively modern and fairly capable tank design is not out of question for the DPRK. It's whether or not it can produce these insignificant numbers that will determine if this tank is a threat or a propaganda piece. The geopolitical world is vastly different than it was 4 years ago when this tank was first revealed, and with it, so were North Korea's priorities on the peninsula. Really? As they shift more towards a legitimate nuclear deterrence capability now in 2024, we might see a pause in future M2020 production, or priorities might shift again, and the next parade has hundreds. With North Korea, it can be anyone's guess. I'm your average infantryman, Chris Cappy. Thank you for watching. Follow me on Instagram for updates on these live events. Also, check out our merch. We have new t-shirt designs, classic FUBAR t-shirt, the modular musket, got your JDAM, all your favorite Pentagon buzzwords like lethality are there too. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys again soon.
All right, so should the world be scared? Should the world be laughing? I guess we'll not know unless somehow this is actually demonstrated and some real data comes out of it. So overall, though, what do you guys think about kind of North Korea's whole military machine? It being a small country, but with such a large and invested military, what do you think that shows? What do you think that says? Is it just a piece of propaganda? It just means their militarization in general as a way to prop up the regime, because the message has largely been inside of North Korea that there are all these enemies. The Korean War is over. Like, it's still in defense mode, you know, something like that, even though the outside world may think of it differently. But again, remember, information black hole here in North Korea for information going out and, of course, information going in. But is this just a power play? So anyways, what do you all think about that? And with that, we'll see you all next time.